From being a child to her teenage years, her big hips attracted attention from men in the village. She didn't realize that this would lead her to being sold out into an object that people found interesting but also made fun of. Once upon a time, in a small village named Gamto, near the Eastern Cape, Sarah's family were part of the Khoikhoi tribe. They were recognized for their unique features, especially her mom, who had a lighter skin color and a curvy big hips that stood out among the tribe's women. Life was hard for Sarah's family, but they held onto their traditions as a cattle herders, embracing their culture. But sadly, tragedy struck when Sarah was just a kid. Her mom passed away when she was only 2, leaving her without parents. Sarah's dad, the head of the family, took care of them until he passed away when she was a teenager. Suddenly, Sarah's life took a turn. Without her parents, the special features she inherited from her mom, like her unique big curves, became a key part of who she was, laying the foundation for the incredible journey that laid ahead. As Sarah went through life without parents, her unique characteristics from her Khoikhoi background became a significant part of who she was. From being a child to her teenage years, her big hips attracted attention from men in the village. Growing up without a parent, Sarah faced difficulties, but her attractive figure made her stand out. Men in the village were drawn to her beauty, especially her lighter skin color and her big curvy hips, inherited from her mom. The local men find her attractive and fascinating due to her big nyash. As Sarah grew up, people started talking about how pretty she was. The way the society saw beauty made her stand out, and guys openly showed they were fascinated by her. Sadly, she had no idea that these attractive qualities would lead to her being taken advantage of and facing tragic events in her life. Growing up, Sarah's beauty became a double-edged sword, a gift and a challenge. Dealing with the hardship of being an orphan, she faced a shift in the village views, from admiration to a mix of pity and fascination. One day, a local village farmer met Sarah crying. He talked to her, promising her a better life. He said,
"Dear, you deserve a life beyond these struggles. Dr. Dunlop can provide you with opportunities you never dreamed of. Trust me, this is your chance for a better future. Let him guide you, and you'll find the stability you've been yearning for."
Sarah was convinced, and she followed the local farmer to his house. But sadly, she didn't realize that this would lead her to being sold out to Dr. William Dunlop. In her vulnerable situation, a Dutch doctor and Royal Navy staff named Dr. William Dunlop showed up. He took advantage by convincing the local farmer to control Sarah's fate. This transaction wasn't about genuine care. Instead, it's a set of series of events that would alter Sarah's life dramatically. Seeing a chance to take advantage of Sarah's situation, Dr. William Dunlop promised Sarah a better life. He said,
"Sarah, your unique beauty is a ticket to a world beyond these struggles. Your big curves, my dear, can open doors to a life of comfort and luxury. Imagine a future where your captivating hips become a source of admiration, granting you a place among the elite. Together, we can forge a path to a better life, where your allure becomes a beacon for success and opportunity. Come to Daddy.
Sarah was so happy, and she was tempted by the idea of a better life. Wanting stability, she reluctantly agreed to Dr. William's offer, but unfortunately, she didn't realize that these choices would take her away from the familiar streets of Gamtu and thrust her into a troubling time of being exploited and treated as less than human being. Sarah worked as a maid for Dr. Williams in Cape Town. While working for him, Sarah made friends with another worker in the house called Cezar. Cezar was a mixed race and a business owner working with Dr. William Dunlop. He became friends with Sarah in the new city. Their friendship gave Sarah a sense of connection in a world that felt more lonely and isolating. As Sarah learned to handle her new responsibilities, her friendship with Hendrik offered comfort, yet she didn't realize that being connected to him would expose her to exploitation and make her lose control over her life. Hendrik and Sarah fell in love with each other, especially Sarah, who was madly in love with him. She got pregnant and gave birth to a son who passed away when he was 1 year old. The complication in her relationship in this unfamiliar place would soon become clear, influencing her future in unexpected ways. As days passed, in a poorly lit room, Dr. Dunlop and Hendrik Cezar handed a paper to Sarah, saying it would give her a much better life than what she had been through. They made her sign a contract. Feeling vulnerable and wanting a better life, Sarah was convinced to put her mark on a paper that she probably didn't understand. The agreement, which seemed like a good deal, started her exploitation. It described the condition that would make her go through humiliating shows in England. The tricky ink on the paper sealed her fate, and the exploitation began. People who were upset about Sarah's situation tried to do something about it. They took the matter to court, hoping to stop Dr. Dunlop's unfair treatment of her. But unfortunately, despite the contract being clearly wrong, the legal fight didn't work, and the unjust terms of the contract won over the call of justice. Hendrik Cezar brought Sarah to London in 1810, and her exploitative experience escalated. Hendrik, working with Dr. Dunlop, introduced Sarah to a world of exploitation and degradation. She lost control over her own action and was made to wear revealing clothes, becoming a living show for the curious audience who paid to watch. The shows, held in different places, transformed Sarah into an object that people found interesting but also made fun of. Some would throw stones at her, poured water on her, threw dirt on her, and made fun of her shapely big hips, which were once seen as beautiful in her culture. They were now used as the audience's sexual desires. The atmosphere was filled with treating her like an object as people stared and made a spectacle of her body. People treated Sarah horribly, going beyond what was right. She was once a free-spirited human from Gamtu, but ended up trapped in a cage of exploitation and degradation. She suffered torment for the amusement of those who paid to watch her being dehumanized. The streets of London saw a tragic event masked as entertainment. Sarah suffered greatly. She was used as a freak show all over London. She cried every day, pleading for mercy, but no one could help her. People treated her like a thing on display, not a person. Some, influenced by wrong idea about race, saw her as less than human, thinking they were better than her. Sarah suffered for fun. She went through even more pain. She lost her self-respect, treated like she wasn't human being just for people's entertainment. The streets of England saw a really bad part of history where unfair judgments about race and using people for gain came together to make Sarah's story even worse. She was forced to work without freedom, controlled by her masters. Unfortunately, things took a sad turn, and she was sold to a Parisian who treated her more like an animal than a person, caring more about his own gain than her well-being. The Parisian, who took care of exotic animals, saw Sarah as just another display in his collection. The lively streets of Paris turned into a disturbing stage where the mistreatment and harm that marked Sarah's journey continued. Sarah was trapped in her new prison, displayed like an exhibit next to animals from faraway places. People paid to see not only the exotic animals, but also the degrading treatment of a woman who had already suffered a lot in the hands of her masters. In the next part of Sarah's tough journey, even though she went through hard times, her spirit kept going. Her eyes, which saw both good and bad things, now showed a strong determination that didn't give up when things got tough. Paris, a city known for being fancy and polished, quietly played a part in the ongoing sadness around her. Every day, Sarah's life in Paris started to feel the same, like a never-ending routine. Her story became a part of how the people in Paris lived. People talked quietly about how she was treated unfairly, and you could hear these whispers in the stone-paved streets. It was like a song that didn't sound right, reminding everyone in the city that they played a role in the unfair things that happened to her. One day, Sarah got caught in a sad part of her story. A famous French scientist called George Cuvier looked at her not as a lady with a tough history, but as something interesting for his science experiments. Cuvier, a scientist, did things that weren't very nice. He looked at Sarah and did tests. He said it was for science, but really he made up things about people from Africa. In his lab, where he worked, it was like a fight between treating Sarah with respect and his idea that we are mean because he believed in them so much. Every day, Cuvier would look at Sarah and only saw her body, not her whole self, with a complicated story. Instead of helping stop the unfair belief, the scientists actually helped to keep those unfair ideas going. Sarah's hard times, now known by people everywhere, got even more complicated. She went through not just being treated badly in shows, but also being treated unfairly by a man who should have known better. Khoisan's study made people think bad things about Africans. He wanted to learn, but he forgot that the person he studied was a real human. This made others treat Africans unfairly for a very long time. In the sad part of Sarah's life, her health, which was already not very strong because she had been treated badly for a long time, Sarah started getting sick, and the first sign was a constant cough that could be heard in the small room where she was kept. The air in Paris, which used to feel fancy and cultured, now felt really cold, showing how bad Sarah's health was getting worse. Sarah got really sick because of a tough enemy called pneumonia. The wetness in her place where she lived and all the sad feelings she had made it easier for this sickness to come and make her even sicker. It was like a really bad thing that made her get worse and worse until she couldn't be okay anymore. In the dark corners of Paris, where the dim candlelights only just showed the tough times of those who were mistreated, Sarah fought against a sickness that was creeping closer. Her fragile body, treated very badly for a long time, and she couldn't afford the treatment she needed. She called upon her masters, but everyone neglected her. Sarah, at the end, was very sad because people didn't help her. Her sad story was like a heavy burden on her tired body, showing how mean people were to her. Even in a fancy city like Paris, no one cared about her, and she felt like a small forgotten part of a big, confusing picture. As Sarah took her final breaths in 1815, at the young age of 26, the city that saw her being treated unfairly and suffering quietly kept moving ahead. Even though it seemed like her story had ended, it would still be heard in history books, asking people to recognize and think about how much pain exploitation can cause. Long after her death, Sarah's body was being displayed in the National Museum in Paris, where rich people were only able to see her with a huge sum of money. People made fun of her even after her death. As the years passed, Nelson Mandela asked the French government to give back Sarah's remains for her to be buried. The French government thought about it, and in 2022, they agreed to return them because they realized it was the right thing to do. People gently held Sarah's bone, trying to make things right. They took her back to South Africa, like a journey to her hometown from a very long time ago. This helped connect the old times to today, where we are still dealing with the mistakes people made in history. On a special day in South Africa called Women's Day, meant to celebrate strong and resilient women, Sarah Bartman was laid to rest in Cape Town. The ground where she experienced hardship and pain now welcomed her in a way that showed they were sorry and recognized her. Thabo Mbeki, a leader in South Africa, decided that where Sarah rests is a special place, calling it a national heritage site. It is like saying, this spot is important because it honors Sarah's memory. The whole story started in a village called Gamto, went through tough times in places like London and Paris, and didn't end even after Sarah's death. But finally, it found a closing chapter in the very ground where Sarah grew up. It is like saying Sarah's story now has a special home where it all began. As Sarah's bones were buried in Cape Town, a very quiet sadness filled the air. People all together understood and remembered a sad time in the past. Sarah Bartman's story, once kept secret, traveled through time to be remembered with respect. The moral lesson of this story is that we should learn to protect human dignity, promotion of cultural understanding, advocating for human rights. In essence, Sarah Bartman's story prompts us to strive for a world where dignity, equality, and justice prevail, transcending the shadows of historical injustice. Please, if you like our story, hit the like button, subscribe, drop a comment. It helps us grow our channel. See you in the next story. Bye.